Hello, welcome to Ditch the Diet, Face the Feelings with Sarah Whalen, Zandra Sperling, and myself, Nourish to Flourish. So we're talking today about balance and alignment. And, sometimes our conversations get a little bit real about what does that mean to ditch the diet and face the feelings. And something that came up for me this morning that kind of, triggered me was that I often want problems just to go away. You've got an issue, you've got something, and you just want it to disappear. You want it to just magically, as if God had a magic wand and poof, it's gone, or Santa Claus or whatever. When sometimes the solution and the learning is that I need to change. So for me, for example, my experience with celiac disease and healing my gut has been a long road of learning to eat for health and well-being and learning to really get in touch with my gut and listen to my body and really get into that depth of what does my body need for health and wholeness and nourishment. The same way that in relationships, we want a relationship to magically get fixed, but maybe what we need is some healthy boundaries, or what we need is to have some tough love. So today we're delving into what does balance and alignment look like in life, in whatever aspect that might be. So I don't know, who wants to go first?
Well, so talking, thinking about boundaries, and there's the old saying that as soon as you enforce a boundary, the people that have the strongest reaction are the ones who were the ones violating the boundaries to begin with. And by not establishing clear and firm boundaries, we are accepting whatever behavior comes our way. And the only way to make that change is what you're saying, Beth. You have to change internally in order to be able to expand that space outward to basically create the fence line of where your boundary is. No matter, like, people are going to do whatever they want. They're going to act however they want, whatever, but you don't have to accept their behavior. But every time you do, you're reinforcing the limitation of your boundary to them.
Yeah.
So,
And that's really tough because I know that, for me, I spent 40 some years of my life being a people pleaser, and, everything was about no confrontation because I wanted to avoid confrontation at all costs. And I would rather say yes to something I desperately wanted to say no to, rather than confront an expectation of me, and have somebody say, oh, you're being selfish. And I wasn't. But like you say, that reaction.
yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of times, it's just speaking for myself, I have repeatedly accepted bad behavior toward me and reinforced that that was okay just because of the virtue of accepting it as it was. And anytime that I, finally stepped into my own power and stood up for myself and set a boundary and said, I will no longer, accept this behavior, it didn't go so well. The other person did not like it at all. It was like, oh. But it's really hard to even recognize, like, when it's hard for us internally to recognize where there are weaknesses in our boundaries, because both parties are so used to whatever the give and take, the flow of the relationship is. Like, you don't even realize that you're personal space and integrity is being encroached upon more and more. It's like,
and not only that, when you push back on that boundary, you are actually breaking the agreement, the unsaid, unspoken, unwritten agreement you had with that person about how that relationship is.
Yeah.
And so, of course, they're justifiably upset about how dare you change the relationship.
Right. All of a sudden, it's like, hold on, I didn't get any advance warning that we were changing the rules. What is going on here?
Exactly.
I think a really good thing to keep in mind is the fact that your boundaries also have to encompass everybody that comes into your life. And if they're family members and your relationship with them is a toxic environment for you yourself, your own soul, your own being, there's nothing wrong with saying, sorry, I'm out of here. Yeah. This is not happening anymore. You cannot, if it affects you to the point where it goes against your beliefs, your way of being, and it affects you emotionally, affects you mentally, then you really need to step back. And there's, people will say, well, that's harsh. That's not the way you're supposed to be. That's a family member or that's a close spouse, or it could be your child. But we all have to take a look at our inner selves and say, what is this relationship to me and how is it serving my soul?
Yeah, it can be so tricky. So think about, I don't know, let's say there's 10 people in the family and all 10 people really want to be together. But there's one person who basically is the bully, and it's either, their way or the highway. And the 9 other people kind of made this agreement, like, we'll just go along because we all want to be together. Then you've set up this really, challenging dynamic where, God, yeah, I really want to be with everybody. And it means that I have to, expose myself to this person's being the bully. And it just brings up, an interesting question of like, how do you set healthy boundaries in a situation like that?
Well, and not only that, I mean, I know from, growing up in, for example, boarding school, where if one of us pushed back, but the group fails to push back, then suddenly you're the bad one.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you've got this person that is used to bullying.
Yeah.
And pushing boundaries. And if you are the only one that stands up and says, no, this is not acceptable. And this happens in families, the same as it happens in classrooms, the same as it happens anywhere. It could be in a workplace. And everybody else is not standing up to say, no, this is not okay. Internally, they might agree with you, but for whatever reason, they're not willing to break that unspoken agreement of this is how we get treated.
Mm-hmm.
And now you are completely out of alignment with the entire group.
Yeah, if you're the one who speaks up. So
yes.
What do? You go along to get along in that situation?
But then where's your inner alignment and balance? This is really tough. And I mean, this is why we talk about ditch the diet and face the feelings, because these are the feelings we're talking about facing.
Exactly. These are the ones that send you to the fridge to eat that entire sheet cake because
exactly.
Because it's a hell of a lot easier to
real.
eat a sheet cake than it is to deal with this shit. Excuse my French, you know.
No, I mean, it's really, it's confusing, and it's hard to see a clear answer for what is, you know, the right thing to do, what's going to produce the best outcome for everybody in the long run. And like in the situation like you're talking about, Beth, where, yeah, okay, so, and same with me, the group of 10 or whatever, and all 9 people have agreed to just let the bully be, you know, run the playground. Well, when one person speaks up, that person gets ostracized, that person, you know, you either get kicked out of the group,
Yeah.
or you know, you're going to feel isolated in some way. I don't know, man, this is tricky stuff.
And then, of course, let's say that you go behind that bully's back and you talk to the entire group before you do this.
Yeah.
Well, then you talked behind their back.
Right.
Okay. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Yeah.
But I think though, and I've had this happen when I was in school too, exactly what you're saying, right? And yeah, you're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't, and you're the one that's actually pushed out of the group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think as we move forward in life and we start growing and we start looking at what are our real true values and how do these people around us, how do they fit into our values?
Yeah.
And the family is perfect example when you're at a family gathering and you've got one person who wants to be that front center, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
How does that person serve you? How do you feel when you leave that gathering? And those are things that I think you really need to look at. Really check in with yourself, your inner self.
But even think about a lifestyle change. Let's say that, you know, I'm in a family that this is the way we've always eaten and this is how we eat. And I decide to start eating healthy. I've now, you know, I show up at a meal or you know, or whatever. And because I don't want to impose on anybody else, I bring my own healthy food.
Yeah. But you've broken a social contract.
But you've broken it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And now everybody else feels uncomfortable. Because, or I mean, let's just say it's as easy as I've stopped drinking. I've gone, you know, totally alcohol free because I just, for me, for example, that's one of my realities of alcohol free because I don't digest it. You know, if I have a glass of wine, I'm going to spend the next 10 days paying for it in my digestive system. So it's just not worth it. One glass of wine, it's just at this moment in time, it's not worth it. But now I'm turning down a glass of wine without having gone into explaining the effects that it has on me and how long I'm going to spend in the bathroom after I've had this glass of wine and for how many days. You know, I don't want to give you all that explanation. But I've broken the rules of our group of I no longer drink.
Yeah.
Now they can think about it for whatever reason they might think I stopped.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter because the result is you've turned against the
Right.
the herd or the tribe.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the difficulty, and it doesn't matter if we're talking about food or drink or even behavior that is now acceptable, unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
You suddenly changed the rules inside the group and you didn't get their consent before you did.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what steps can we take to set healthy boundaries and bring ourselves into alignment with our own core values and still be aligned specifically like within the family, because, friend groups will change over time. They do.
Yeah, they just do. They morph. Yeah.
So, but the family, is supposed to be there for the duration.
But my question is, does it really have to be? If it doesn't align with your values, if it is not, and I use the word serving, and I don't mean it as in they are serving you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean it as, just because they are family does not mean that you have to be associated with them at this point in time. You can move away and regroup your own self. And when you
Sometimes
come
we
back,
have to, absolutely.
yes. And when you come back to that reality of, I've regrouped, I'm stronger inside, I know how to deal with this, then you can go back in.
But you've still broken the rules.
Yeah, but
But who broke the rules?
When you go away and regroup, and now you know how to deal with it, like specifically to help our viewers, what is it that you can do to help yourself deal with it better?
Come back into the group. It's the stepping away, I think, is really healthy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the coming back in with a new set of rules and boundaries, of this is how things need to be, in order just to be healthy, in order just for wholeness to exist in this space within this relationship. That's the hard question.
The thing that's coming up for me, I guess, more strongly than anything is, going back to my example, let's say there's 10 and I want to hang out with these 9 other people, even though one of them is a bully. And everybody else has already agreed that they're just going to go along with whatever the bully says because they want to all be together. So
Yeah.
I want to be with my family. So what do I do internally? Adopt an attitude of, okay, I just don't care. Whatever the bully says is fine. And whatever the bully wants to do is fine. Because I can see where, like,
see myself anymore doing that. I know I've tried that way. I've tried that of, it's just going to be, I'm going to be that person that's, it's like a duck and it just rolls off my back and it doesn't affect me. But there is still a certain misalignment in that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a real struggle of coming back in and saying, do you sit down and have a one-on-one with that person? Depends on the situation, depends on the person. Is there that depth of confidence and relationship with that person to have that kind of conversation of, this is not acceptable to me?
Right.
And I know for me,
typically with a bully, it's not.
I've lost relationships, but I've been open about, this is the relationship I want to have. And if the relationship that you are offering me is here, I'm not interested in having this relationship. So we can either have this relationship or we won't have a relationship. I'll still show up, to family gatherings or whatever. But it's no longer going to be that depth of relationship. And it's starting to come from a place of really knowing yourself first and foremost. Like Sandra said, stepping away and saying, who am I? And I want to have this level of relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I am simply not prepared to come down. I can love this person and completely love this person without bringing that relationship down to this level.
Yes, and I totally agree with that, Beth, because within ourselves, we're capable of loving the people around us and outside of us. But I think as you grow, and I'm talking about you're growing internally, you're learning how to honor. You're learning to honor yourself. And if you put yourself wherever you are, it doesn't matter whether you're here, here, or here. It doesn't matter. It's how do you honor yourself? Would you accept, and I think this is a really good question, would you accept that treatment or that disrespect from your partner? If the answer is yes, then you're within that realm of wherever you are. That is your growth level. We don't grow at the same time. We don't grow at the same speed. We don't grow on the same level of spirituality. We don't grow on the same level of maturity.
Mm-hmm.
But you can step back. You can treat the person that is that bully or that disrespectful in a crowd and still say, at that level, you deserve a certain amount of my respect. But it doesn't mean that you've got to be tight and center
Right.
to me. I don't have to have that.
Yeah. One of the things that I love, that I've learned in recent years with, and it started with what Bonnie said was, she's like, there's you and there's your inner circle. And then outside that inner circle are other layers of acquaintances, of friends, but not necessarily your inner circle. And so now I focus a lot more on who do I let into that inner circle. And the fact that you are family or friends doesn't necessarily mean your inner circle for me.
Yeah, right.
And it's looking at that and saying, well, wait a minute, this person I want to have in my life, but I'm just going to slide you out to the next level. You're still in my life. You're still important to me, but you don't get to be inner circle. You don't get to be somebody that deeply influences who I am and how I'm growing.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to investing your time and energy in that relationship, you're going to decide how much you're willing to give to that relationship and you can choose to still love that person and spend time, but no longer be that influenced by that person.
I think too, and I wrote this post in my group today because of certain things that happened over the last 2 weeks. And I come up with this. I'm just going to share it with you because I know a lot of you aren't in my group, so you wouldn't see the post. Never let someone who did you wrong make you think there's something wrong with you.
Right.
Don't devalue yourself because they didn't value you. Know your worth.
Yeah.
Always.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
And I think if you think about it as how do you value yourself?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what the other person did. It's how do you value you? How do you respect you? What's inside you that makes you you?
And I definitely think that's the first step. That's the first step of coming to this relationship from a new place, is really getting clear on your value, not the value that person assigns to me. but the value that I assign to me.
And then you just
And
draw
this is not from a place of arrogance.
Draw a line.
you just well no seriously, you just like basically draw a line around how deeply you will engage with that person.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Yeah.
That's where your boundary is. Just like, I know I can, talk about these certain topics, or
Mm-hmm.
we can get into a conversation to this level, but I will not go beyond that with them, because that's when it starts to get toxic, or whatever
Right.
the situation is.
Yeah. Well, guys, as always, we have run out of time, and I don't feel like we've done the topic justice.
Family therapy.
Yeah. But in any case, I think that, as we come to grips with what it means to be healthy and whole, and what it means to nourish ourselves, not just in terms of food and exercise, but really nourished, our relationships nourish us,
Mm-hmm.
And we have all these in every group we're in, irrespective of what kind of group that is, whether that's work, whether that's family, whether that's friends. There are unwritten rules of this is how this group works.
Mm-hmm.
And it's realizing that the moment I change the rules of the group. And we don't necessarily realize we've done that. And as we're growing and transforming, when we recognize that we are upsetting that balance, it's easier to handle it. It's easier to find that balance.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you're not going to continue to make the changes. It's just that you maintain your awareness of what you're doing and how you're interacting and how you are affecting the biome of the group, and it's okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same as, you start taking a probiotic, and your stomach may alert you to things have gotten a little unbalanced in here to how they were. Okay? Because you've changed the entire balance within the system.
Yeah.
And it is simply saying that's okay. If I'm doing this change for my health and well-being, it might get a little uncomfortable, but I'm willing to do that. The same way that, I start a new exercise regime, or I change, which exercises I'm doing because it was starting to get easy. Well, guess what? Different muscles start to hurt because they weren't being used. And all of that, whatever that change is, there might be some soreness. There might be some, this just doesn't quite feel like it did because now I'm outside of my comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's finding that balance and alignment for ourselves. So thank you, guys. Has anybody got anything special happening this week that others might want to know about?
I do.
Yeah.
Right now in the group, there is a Healthy Body Image Challenge. Where we're actually really talking about how do you feel within yourself? How are you honoring yourself? What are you doing to make those changes? And then later on this month, I will have a self-acceptance mini program.
Oh.
Can't make changes within your health unless you work on all areas of your health.
Yeah. Awesome.
Sarah, I know you had launched recently something very special of a different nature. It's not exactly health and well-being, but I know that you and Margaret were doing something with hypnosis and healing.
Actually, it really has a lot to do with health and well-being, because what we have launched is basically a kind of new modality of doing, for example, regression hypnosis, and with shamanic guide to go back and do energetic healing. And
Right. Yeah.
there's the page is called Hope, all capital letters. And if you go on there and read Sharon's review of our session with her, you'll be amazed at the results that she's gotten. So it's definitely helping in the health and wellness realm here in the present by going back and healing, past event traumas. So, yeah, pretty magical.
Fantastic. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've got to go. I've got a 6-year-old and I've got a thunderstorm coming in and somebody's getting scared. So this has been fantastic. Thank you, ladies, so much. And I will see you all next week.
Sounds good. Bye.
Sounds great. Bye.